Okay, my clock has just tipped over to 6:05, so I will start the meeting here. I'm Jack Leapster. I'm the planning manager for advanced planning. And we're holding this session today because we're undertaking a new approach to completing the environmental hazards section of the local coastal program. And so I would like to welcome you all to this listening session, as Kathleen just mentioned. But to kick it off and let some of those folks who are still trying to join us go ahead and join us, we've got some polls that we'd like you to participate in. And Carissa, if you bring up the first one. So this is like, where do you live? And we'll note that you do need to screen or scroll down. We have a whole bunch of places down ending with outside the county. So if you can click on those, we'll see where people are coming from. Well, it looks like with about 60% of the people, we have a lot of people from Marshall and the East Shore, and a lot of people from other parts of the county other than West Marin, and of course some people from Stinson Beach. So on the next poll, I think people have already started entering that, and we've got about 4 times as many owners as we have renters. And looks like we don't have a lot of young folk here. We do have 30-somethings and on up. So that's a good indication of sort of who's joining us tonight. I'd like to do some introductions here of the members from the Coastal Commission and our own CDA staff who will be working on this new approach to completing the LCP hazard areas. So I will turn it over to Stephanie Rexing, who is the district manager of the North Central Coast District, and she can introduce her colleagues.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some familiar faces here, familiar names if I've never met you before. I just want to take this opportunity to introduce you guys to our Coastal Commission North Central staff, since we've had a bit of changing of the guard since there was, a last effort in earnest to update the hazards policies. So I'm the district manager for North Central, and we also have here our supervisor and planner, and I will let them introduce themselves. But before we do that, I just want to say we are very excited to be reinvigorating this effort and coordinating with county staff to solve some of these, really challenging but very important policy considerations. And we're just really honestly looking forward to hearing from you all today. And so with that, I will turn it over to our district supervisor and planner to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Stephanie. My name is Julia Cotman-Norton. I'm the district supervisor with the North Central Coast District Office of the Coastal Commission. And I also am looking forward to hearing from all of you and working on getting these hazards policies up and running.
Hi, everyone. I'm Honora Montano. I am a coastal planner covering Marin County at the North Central District. And I'm excited to hear from all of you and work on this hazards update.
And from our staff side, we have Tom Lai in attendance tonight. He's the relatively new Director of the Community Development Agency. And I'll throw it on to Sarah Jones, who can also introduce herself.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Sarah Jones. I am the basically new, couple months now, Assistant Director of the Community Development Agency. New to Marin County. I've already had a chance to meet a few of you. I'm looking forward to getting acquainted with more of you tonight, and really excited to be part of what feels like a great effort, and you'll hear us say this a lot tonight, but a new beginning on this. And pass it on to some of our other team staff.
Jeremy, why don't you we'll go to Jeremy.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeremy Tuggerian. I'm a planning manager. Normally, I work in the current planning program, but in this case, I'm going to be participating in the team working on the hazards section, and I'm really looking forward to what all of you can bring tonight and some of the great suggestions that you're going to have for us. So thank you all for coming.
Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Kilgariff. I'm a planner helping support the local coastal program and this environmental hazards update. I'll be presenting shortly.
And Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Lako. I'm a planner with CDA. I wasn't planning on being on screen tonight. I'm just here to take notes and listen as well. Thanks.
Okay, so you've heard us allude to a new approach to the LCP hazards section. Under this approach, the Coastal Commission and county staffs will be trying to develop common areas of agreement that we then can bring to you, the public, and to the decision makers at the county and commission, rather than going through the whole process and running into conflicts and disagreements before we get through the commission. We'll have Kathleen will have more to say about that in a moment. So I want to assure everyone that the information that you've provided us along the way in this process is, we have that all, and we'll be looking at all of that. We are very much aware of it, and we'll take it into account. But this opportunity is to share any insights and concerns that you have at this point, so that they can be worked into the process that we're following. We're calling this a listening session because we want to do exactly that, listen. To be frank, we've not progressed along this partnership yet to the degree that we could answer questions in a consistent and agreed upon manner. So we're just going to listen, and we ask you, we very much appreciate it if you would please phrase your concerns and suggestions in the form of a statement rather than a question. And out of courtesy to everyone who's here tonight, and so everyone gets a chance to speak, we're asking you to limit your statements to 2 minutes. If you want to provide additional information, you can put it in the chat, or you can email us at marinlcp@marincounty.org, and that will be up on the final slide of the presentation. We'll be feeding that into the process. And then after everybody gets a chance to speak, we can then take additional information if you want. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen, who will take us through the process that we're talking about.
All right, good evening and welcome. As I previously noted, my name is Kathleen Kilgariff, and I'm a planner with the Marin Community Development Agency. This is just our introduction screen. So I just wanted to quickly review what we're going to cover tonight. I'm going to provide a broad introduction for our listening session this evening by providing an update on the local coastal program, environmental hazards policies update. I might, deviate between local coastal program and LCP, but they're both essentially always kind of referring to this environmental hazards policy update, which can also sometimes be called EH update or environmental hazards. So those kind of interplay with each other. If I say these and you need some clarity, we can talk about that offline. But I just also want to introduce coastal planning considerations that both CDA and the Coastal Commission staff must consider when developing these environmental hazard policies. However, the main objective for tonight's meeting is to hear from you. We've scheduled ample time following my quick presentation for you to share your thoughts on the future of the county's coastal zone. So please hold your comments until this portion of the meeting. That said, if a comment is on your mind, you can always enter it into the Zoom chat box at any time. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started about Zoom. You're probably all experts by now. We've been doing this for a while, but just want to let you know that all attendees are currently muted for the first portion of tonight's meeting. During the comment portion of the meeting, we'll use the raised hands function to make sure we address everyone's comments. To raise your hand, hover your mouse over the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and select the raise hands option. When you're called on, you can unmute yourself by clicking the microphone icon at the bottom of the screen. Please be sure to remute yourselves when you're done speaking to allow other participants their opportunity to be heard. You're welcome to participate with your video on or off. Please do what feels comfortable for you. If you'd like to turn your video on, you can click the start video icon at the bottom of your screen. We recognize that folks here tonight might have differing opinions, and as such, we ask that you remain respectful and allow all those who wish to speak an opportunity to do so. Please help us ensure we can allow everyone an opportunity to speak. As Jack noted, we want to limit comments to around 2 minutes. However, like if time allows, we can allow more opportunities for speaking. The chat, again, is always open for comments. Another additional ground rule that has also been noted that will kind of continue to reiterate this evening is that both staff from CDA and the Coastal Commission are here to listen. Comments should be made as statements. And if you have questions, we'll provide our contact information at the end of this meeting, and you can follow up with us directly. Goals and objectives for this evening, as noted, we'll be providing a quick overview of the progress to date, introduce some coastal planning considerations, and allow time to share your thoughts on your vision and the priorities for the county's coast. We are completely aware of the many, many hours our coastal communities have already invested in the LCP process, and we will honor that work as we move forward. It is important for all of us to collectively recognize that if we're going to get certified environmental hazard policies, that they are going to be required to be consistent with the Coastal Act. Important in those considerations are how hazard policies relate to the Act's coastal resource protections, such as places like sandy beaches and important habitats like wetlands. At the same time, we need to understand that those considerations and, we need to understand those protections for the habitat in light of ensuring resilient marine communities, including making sure that those communities are also protected. It is in that space that we're trying to find the best strategies. For example, we want to ensure that the built environment of Stinson Beach can continue to thrive, while at the same time making sure that the beach remains available for public access, including as sea levels rise. How do we achieve both? Those are the kind of questions that we're going to ask this evening that we're going to need to answer together. Quick update on the environmental hazards. As you may be aware, that since 2008, the Marin County Community Development Agency has collaborated with Coastal Commission staff to update the county's local coastal program. As of August 2021, all portions of the Marin County's local coastal program have been approved by the Board of Supervisors and certified by the Coastal Commission, with the exception of the environmental hazards. These environmental hazards provisions remain the subject of ongoing work, which is why you're here tonight. Both CDA and Coastal Commission staff are committed to working collaboratively to complete this environmental hazards update as soon as possible. To do this, CDA and Commission staff have discussed taking a different approach to the LCP hazards provisions. This new approach is to engage directly with the Commission staff to see where we can find mutual objectives to work out some measures of agreement before coming to the public for discussion of environmental hazards policies. In the past, we've done things a little differently, and we've gone through a whole local process with workshops and hearings. We brought policies to the Planning Commission for review and the Board of Supervisors for action, and then submitted documents to the Coastal Commission. This time around, the Coastal Commission has really generously offered their time and engagement to work together, and we've agreed to a collaborative process to be carried out prior to moving forward with those local steps. All of this is in the hope of finding common ground on the final part of this local coastal program update. Some of these visions and objectives may lead to difficult trade-offs that need to be considered before policies can be drafted. But before we get into that, let's just talk quickly about a high-level kind of a summary of the regulatory framework that we must consider under this whole process. So first, we've got the Coastal Act. The Coastal Act guides how land along the California coast is developed or protected from development. It emphasizes the importance of the public being able to access the coast and the preservation of sensitive coastal and marine habitat and biodiversity. Then nestled under that, we have the local coastal program. The local coastal program aims to carry out the coastal resource protection policies of the California Coastal Act at a local level. Each coastal city and county in California is required by the Coastal Act to prepare and implement an LCP for its portion of the coastal zone. An LCP is comprised of both a land use plan and an implementation plan. The land use plan contains written policies that indicate which land uses are appropriate in the various parts of the coastal zone. It also guides how natural resources shall be protected when land is developed, how public access to the coast shall be preserved, and how other coastal resources shall be maintained and enhanced. The implementation program consists of the coastal zone specific portion of the Marin County Development Code. And under that, we've got the countywide plan. So Marin County has adopted a comprehensive land use plan for its entire jurisdiction area. However, in the coastal zone, the LCP does take precedence, where the LCP contains specific provisions applicable to land and water development. Such LCP provisions govern development activities. Policies of the countywide plan that are not addressed by the Coastal Act and the LCP, such as ones that are associated with education, diversity, and public health, are applied through the countywide plan, both within the coastal zone and outside of it. As previously noted, community plans are part of the countywide plan and contain policies for land use and development related specifically to a local area. And then finally, we have certain ordinances in the county's development code that are applicable within the coastal zone. So it kind of just goes, state regulations, local coastal program, countywide plan, community plans, development code, and they all nestle within that framework. So as we've said, sort of a new beginning and recognizing that there's an opportunity to creatively undertake the environmental hazard policy development, staff has been discussing new approaches with the Coastal Commission staff. As a first step in this new direction, CDA and Coastal Commission staff agreed upon interagency shared principles for goals for developing new environmental hazards and how to move forward when we're finding substantive issues between those goals. I'm going to just give a high level summary of what those are. You can go to our website, the local coastal program website, and see the full list of the shared principles in that full language, but these are just a summary. So 1, we're going to be prioritizing equity. 2, understand growing climate challenges and available adaptation and resilient options to decide which way we want to go. 3, ensure Coastal Act and California Code of Regulations consistency. 4, plan for future adaptation. 5, consider a phased approach. 6, build upon existing sea level rise guidance. And 7, work to reconcile the trade-offs inherent in coastal planning. So while we've established agreed upon principles for substantial issues that may arise, there are also inherent principles and kind of a guiding framework that is foundational to the basic development of the environmental hazards policies. And these include the following: that the policies must be Coastal Act consistent. I really want to get that message across, because at the end of the day, everything has to be Coastal Act consistent. Policies must be based on identified visions and objectives for each community or area. Policies must set clear requirements and expectations, and they may be phased within the LCP to account for changes in physical circumstances and or understanding as time. This allows us to build in steps through the LCP process. So as you continue to think about your vision for the county's coastal zone, this is an important framework to remember, and you may want to speak to it later this evening. Additionally, we have Coastal Act and community considerations. So Coastal Act considerations provide protection for coastal access and natural resources, while community considerations promote resiliency and strike a balance between natural resource preservation and the built environment. At times, these considerations can be in conflict. And because of this, we must think about what should be prioritized as we plan for the future. Building upon the large amount of work that has been done to date as part of your involvement in the local coastal program update, we want to check back in and just start examining our shared visions for the county's coastal zone. Visioning is crucial as we begin to draft environmental hazard policies. For example, if your vision for the future is to preserve coastal access for all, what sort of trade-offs are you willing to consider for that access to be preserved? The Coastal Commission staff has provided us with some trade-offs to consider when thinking about the future of our coastal zone. For example, we have this idea between armoring and beaches or hardened edges versus natural conditions. We want to kind of think about what those what decisions would make it so that we can consider those future implications, right? So if you have armoring, you have to think that it could potentially impact access. It could inhibit erosion, which in turn impacts sand production, or it could prevent a beach from moving landward as sea level rise. With armoring, you have things like coastal scouring that you have to consider. So there's just a lot of things at play that we would like you to provide us some feedback on, because we want to make sure that we can plan accordingly when faced with these important decisions that could impact the future for a long time. An example of what I was just kind of speaking to is this idea of the potential impacts on our future coastline. So shoreline armoring like this seawall could lead to loss of sand generating materials and a loss of beach, effectively leading to the ocean covering the beach as sea levels rise. In contrast, where natural erosion processes are allowed to continue, beaches themselves can adapt and reform. And this slide kind of is a great example of showing both considerations, where you've got beach on one side, seawall, and you're seeing that there's not as much sediment around into another more sand-full beach, really. So now is the time for me to stop talking and let you all share your thoughts. Please keep our previously established ground rules in mind as we begin the listening portion of this session. If you did not come prepared with something to say, please feel free to consider what we have just covered, or use the prompts listed here to formulate your thoughts. How this will work is that I'm going to call on those who raise their hands. So please be patient with me, as we may have many speakers. Please also be cognizant of the fact that we might have speakers. And as we said, limit your comments to about 2 minutes. And again, we can come back and adjust accordingly. Again, you can always also place comments in the chat. I'll periodically stop and share comments from it if those are coming in, and we're not just hearing from speakers. But again, as Jack noted, phrasing your questions you may have as statements is going to be the way to do this. We're not necessarily going to be responding to your questions this evening. And at the end, we'll provide our website and our contact information so that you can follow up directly with any questions you may have.
one thing quickly on that, we're not we are here to hear and not kind of respond substantively, but if you have questions of clarification, like I already see one in the chat, or if there are kind of terms or concepts that don't make sense to you, please ask. In that we do want to understand. We want everybody to be able to participate and follow along. So, like we use the term armoring, we can define that quickly, and other questions of clarification, please just ask. So before we start, actually, Kathleen, will you quickly define armoring? Just in case that I know a lot of people here have been involved in this a lot, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page.
For the discussion that I was talking about, armoring can be seawall, revetment, riprap, bulkhead. It can be really a lot of things. We have other, hardened features along shorelines, which can be even the foundation of a structure. So it really is a broad term, but it really is kind of the bigger level of like that consideration is thinking kind of about a natural shoreline versus one that has development on it. So I'm not seeing any hands raised. I got one. Okay, here we go. David and Susanna Singer, you may be able to unmute yourself. You can turn your camera on if you'd like and share your thoughts.
Yeah, I wonder whether you could clarify, use the word natural just now, and the Tamales Bay shoreline, for example, has been significantly affected by human development over the last century and a half, the development of Highway 1, the railroad, and so on. What is the sort of the desirable state which you envision of a being natural?
So again, I'm going to turn that into a statement rather than a question, because we really are not equipped at this point to answer questions that come up of that nature. But your concern is that that we really have a clear definition of what is natural and what is not natural, and integrate that into our process, if I'm correct.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's a good thing for us to consider.
And Jack, maybe I can say something. I think tonight we want to hear from you what you would consider an ideal shoreline in Tamales, understanding that there may be policy considerations that speak to, something that would protect resources like sandy beaches there, or, some natural landforms like Kathleen was pointing out. And so we want to hear from you about what your priorities for certain areas are. And so, natural conditions are important to consider, but tonight we want to hear from you about what, your priorities for each area are.
Yeah, and that kind of feeds back into the question in the chat about public input. And, we felt really strongly that we need to be hearing these perspectives as we go in to draft the policies. There's, as Kathleen mentioned, there have been many years at this point of input and a lot of hours put in by everybody. But, we wanted to sort of give this opportunity to make sure that we were hearing where people are right now, and that the people who are going to be working on and drafting these policies are directly hearing this.
So the next person on the list with their hand raised was George Clyde. George, you can unmute and speak. Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much, and hello to everybody. My name's George Clyde. I'm 80 years old. My wife and I live in Marshall in a modest 840 square foot home on Tamales Bay. It's built on pilings over the water with a bulkhead that protects a small strip of dry land and then Highway 1. Under the sea level rise projections, it's a reasonable plan for the loss of the home and the highway itself at the end of the century, about 75 years from now. Those will be 75 wonderful years for us and the next generations of our family, if we can remain in Marshall. But I worry that our family will be unable to protect our home in the years ahead because of the prohibitively expensive permitting requirements. Our family will need to replace the pilings and foundation and to reinforce the bulkhead if it is to survive to the end of the century. We may also need to elevate the home and to protect the septic tank. But will all that be possible? A neighbor, even older than I am, recently tried to get a coastal permit for protection for her home. After more than $75,000 of permitting costs, she gave up and sold her home, leaving behind the community where she and her family had lived for over 40 years. Another project, we built a historic bulkhead along Highway 1 that dates to the railroad in the 1870s. The Coastal Commission imposed high mitigation fees, mostly for the theoretical loss of sand that would have been released if the bulkhead had been allowed to fail. For our property, similar mitigation fees would be about $100,000. It'll be terrible loss to us and the rest of our family if these high permitting fees force us to sell our home to a wealthy second home buyer. And it will be a terrible loss for our modest coastal community if harsh permitting requirements mean that only the very rich will be able to enjoy the coastal homes in our area. The principles allow for sensible protection of existing developments that support and enhance the community. I ask the county and the Coastal Commission to apply the principles in a way that protects and does not destroy our communities and the coastal resources that they provide, even as the sea level rises. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Now we have Romeo.
Hi, thank you, Marin CDA team, Jack, as well as the folks joining us from the California Coastal Commission. I am speaking on behalf of the Marin Association of Realtors, and we're a member of the Smart Coast California Coalition. And while I'll try to keep my comments under 2 minutes, I will send a summary of my comments to the email so you have them in writing. First off, I want to applaud the hard work of the county staff on issues like sea level rise. They're on the ground, they're speaking to local communities that would be affected, and they are familiar with the area and local concerns. So we appreciate their help that so many of us call home. So I just want to state a couple of places where we agree with the county. We agree that mandatory retreat should not be a near-term solution to address sea level rise, given the fact that there are many existing places that have nowhere to retreat. And anything that would trigger demolition or relocation should have due process with established thresholds, relocation assistance or buyback programs to compensate property owners if a property becomes unusable. We support the report's inclusion of hard protection options to protect existing development, such as Sea Drift and Stinson Beach, and especially adaptation measures that call for maintaining existing shoreline protective devices. And we agree that there should be an array of options, including community-wide adaptation involving living shorelines, elevation, beach nourishment, selective arboring, and artificial reefs, especially because community-wide protective structures often work more effectively and cost effectively compared to single property devices. And then I also want to mention that we believe that existing means that it exists today. We support Marin's plans and not including the Coastal Commission's unsupported definition of existing development that goes back to 1977, and emphasize that defining existing as what exists at the time of the certification of the LCPA will help to set precedent of good policy that is clear and that other jurisdictions can emulate for effective and fair adaptation outcomes. There's examples in Carlsbad and Santa Barbara, which I'll send, where they've adopted the definition of existing that I'm.
Yeah, you're muted. Okay. Yeah, unmute.
Yep. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Right, next we have Jennifer Blackman.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity to hear the concerns and input from residents of Marin County and others who might be here that are really concerned about these vital issues as we move forward with the environmental hazard sections. My name is Jennifer Blackman, and I'm the chair of the Alliance of Coastal Marin Villages, which is a group of representatives from each of the 10 coastal villages in the unincorporated part of West Marin. My day job is as the general manager of the Bolinas Community Public Utility District. I'm the Bolinas representative to the Alliance. And as I know the county is aware, we've been deeply involved in the LCP update process over the last 10 years or so, and attending numerous meetings and submitting detailed comments on issues of common concern to our communities. And I'm not going to repeat those now. We're very interested to learn more over time about how the Coastal Commission and CDA staff see the or envision the shared principles that they've developed about how those principles will inform the development of the EH policies. So we'll be really interested to see how that progresses. I think you all know that our primary concern is the protection and preservation of one of the Marin coastline's most treasured resources, which are the vibrant coastal communities. In Marin County, our rural communities are where the public comes to recreate and enjoy the coastal zone, including but not limited to the beaches. Our communities are nestled amongst federal, state, and local parklands. Our villages are home to museums, ranches, farms, historic buildings, restaurants, shops, and other amenities that visitors and residents alike visit and enjoy. And while we certainly agree that the coast's natural and scenic resources are very important, we believe it is critical to remember that Section 30116 of the Coastal Act defines sensitive coastal resource areas as including special communities or neighborhoods which are significant visitor destination areas, as well as areas that provide existing coastal housing or recreational opportunities of low and moderate income persons. Those are identified as sensitive coastal resource areas, and we submit that any analysis of Coastal Act consistency must take that into account on an equal footing with scenic and natural resources. They're not prioritized differently. All of our villages qualify as communities, special communities or neighborhoods which are deserving of this protection. And when developing the environmental hazards chapters, we urge you to keep in mind that the Coastal Act expressly recognizes the special status of these communities, and in doing so, acknowledges that protecting the coast is not a zero-sum game in which existing development must be removed or its maintenance must be unreasonably burdened in order to protect other coastal resources. To the contrary, the Coastal Act seeks to achieve a balance whereby coastal communities and other coastal resources can coexist and prosper, maintained as special places for the public to visit and residents to inhabit as long as reasonably possible, given the potential implications of climate change, if we can't somehow agree to comprehensively come together and address and reverse the causes of that climate change. Thanks very much.
Thanks. And we have Ken, you're next.
Hello, my name is Ken Levin. I'm the president of the Point Reyes Station Village Association. I've lived in Point Reyes for over 50 years, and I'm a local business owner as well. Thank you for creating this opportunity for the public to express its vision for the coastal zone and how this environmental hazard update can support our vision. I sincerely hope that you will hear us. The Point Reyes Station Village Association has been representing the interests of local residents, property owners, and those doing business in town for almost 40 years. We realize how lucky we are to be able to live and or work in such a dramatically beautiful and relatively unspoiled place, and we are committed to preserving it, not just for ourselves, but for the millions of annual visitors who come to enjoy our town and the other small villages located in coastal West Marin. In order to care for these precious local resources, the LCP must allow us to protect and maintain our neighborhoods and special communities. We fully understand the growing climate challenges, the fact that the sea is rising, and that we need to take action to respond to these challenges. However, work on existing structures that is required for maintenance and repair or to address health and safety issues should not be defined as new development. To this end, we urge you to clarify the wording of Principle 4 in your shared principles so that it specifies new development as well as new subdivisions. In other words, add the word new in front of the word development, please. Finally, it needs to be emphasized how beautiful yet varied our California coast is in both natural and human constructed form. The differences between the South Coast, the Central Coast, and the coast north of the Golden Gate are particularly striking. No single set of rules, codes, and regulations is appropriate for it all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. I'm just going to go to the chat for just a moment and address some things that have come up. There was a question about whether or not this recording and these slides will be posted on the website. They will. We will be doing that in hopefully next week, but in the coming weeks for sure. We have a statement about if we're going to start using terms like natural, that we should clearly define it because in the context of a shoreline that has been affected over a long period by humans, that can mean something different than what we're thinking about. And then additionally, there's a statement emphasizing that the protection of wildlife is crucial. And now we can go to Jeff.
Great, thanks very much, Kathleen. My name is Jeff Lumens. I'm a member of the Alliance of Coastal Marin Villages from Stinson Beach and representing the Stinson Beach Village Association, of which I'm on the LCP subcommittee. We actually have a full subcommittee for this, spanning back 12 years. I do want to thank Coastal Commission staff for their presence here. I think it's extremely constructive and very appreciated that for the first time both staffs are present to really listen to the communities affected at the beginning of this process. The number one thing I want to raise is Stinson community participation has really been critical, and we've been involved heavily for over 12 years in the local coastal program. It's not just something of interest to a few of us. We've had many community meetings. Jack's been present at several, as have his staff. These have attracted more than 100 villages in some instances. This is a huge percentage of the population of our tiny village. We've provided feedback and been involved in reviewing drafts. Going back now, I think this will be the 5th that we'll be looking at and working on. And as part of ACMV, a very important thing is that we work together with other ACMV villages, all the villages of West Marin, to create a consensual Stinson Beach set of really important issues in the local coastal program, things that we consider really non-starters if they end up engaged, or that are critical for the survival of our village. And together with the other villages, we agreed on these. They've been submitted and discussed with ourselves and with county for 2 years. And so when you consider local community participation, which is a Coastal Act requirement, the 2021 through 25 Coastal Commission strategic documents says maximum public participation is critical and required. Please consider these critical, important 10 issues that we've previously submitted to county. Things like being able to use elevation as a solution rather than managed retreat. Not having to have forced removal of our homes when any particular agency outside of judicial process simply decides that we have to leave. And critically, being able to continue to develop our homes. If these homes fall apart, Stinson Beach and the rest of our villages fall apart, that's not good under the Coastal Act. We can no longer provide visitor services. It's not good for local communities, which are considered by the Coastal Act to be a critical resource. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff. In the chat, we've got a statement that says the protection of coastal communities' infrastructure, including roadways and utilities, should be directly considered as part of this LCP update. Thanks. And now we have Anne.
And you're muted.
Yeah, Anne.
You're muted, Anne.
Hello.
Okay.
I, along with the other people that have spoken, really are very appreciative of this meeting. Thank you all for putting it together. My husband and I have been full-time residents in Marshall for 28 years now. I'm a director on the East Shore Planning Group in Marshall, and I'm also representing Marshall as a member of the Alliance of Coastal Marin Villages. My concern really that I'm sure it's many people's concern is the shortest sentence in the principles, which is principle number 4, place restrictions on new subdivisions and development to make future adaptation easier. And since we've been working very closely with the county and also with the coastal commission staff, we really need to, in order to continue the conversation in depth, we really need to have some definitions of some of the words in that sentence. For instance, the word development, it really needs to be more defined to further discussion and get everybody's point of view. Also, restrictions, the word restrictions. How do we define that? How do you define that? How does the county define that? That needs more clarification also. And of course, the word in there, adaptation, really needs clarification. I know these are difficult questions, but we really appreciate it, if there can continue to be more forthright information about the words in that particular principle. Thank you very much.
Dan.
And if I can just follow up on that, it sounds like one thing that we should try to make sure as when we bring forward, draft policies and things, is that we really have a very clear and explicit definitions portion of it.
Yeah, I don't see any additional hands raised at the moment. If you'd like to speak, please. Okay, yeah, we've got Riley Hurd. Hi, Riley.
Yeah, hey, thank you very much. First of all, as a regular participant in government processes, I would like to greatly commend the county and the Coastal Commission for taking this collaborative approach. That's incredibly rare. And I think it's going to yield a much better result than the last go around. So that's awesome. I am a land use attorney that is called weekly, if not more, about potential projects in the coastal zone. And the thing that I am lacking right now is clarity. What can we do? I would like to purchase this property for, X million dollars. What does the future hold? And not being able to answer those questions is incredibly difficult. So I think the clarity comment would be one of the most useful things that comes out of this is finally getting some answers. I've heard things like the theory of retreat for sea level rise. That's just not viable in Marin. Nobody is moving their house from Stinson Beach up to Parkland or other multi-million-dollar properties that are higher. So that one just I think we should focus on viable strategies for addressing this. There is significant investment that has occurred, and it's not just Seadrift or the other areas, the patios, other coastal zones in Marin, and people had investment-backed expectations in these properties. And I think it's very reasonable for them to be able to maintain them, remodel them, and continue living there. So I wanted to throw that out there. So that's really all I had to say. The final thing is, I believe it is the hazard element that will address the East Scoot Creek and the moratorium and getting some clarity on that. That has gone on for so long that people are forced to address necessary improvements to their home by means perhaps outside of the official channels. And that's something that you never want to encourage. So we've got to resolve not just sea level rise, but the inland, slightly inland flooding issue as well. So I'm really hoping that this can move forward. I'd like to offer up any help or insights from constantly having to process these multiple applications through LCP, design review, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like to start being able to tell folks what to expect, because right now it's very murky. Thank you.
Thanks. Our next speaker would be Tom.
Yes, I'm Tom Flynn. I'm on the board of East Shore Planning Group and also on the LCP subcommittee, and have had a home in Marshall for over 30 years. And I also really appreciate the tone of this meeting, the collaborative sense, and just the concept of sharing principles and seeking common ground where we can hopefully build in the direction of common purpose ultimately. And I really want to give the county and the Coastal Commission staff a lot of credit for that. I also think that the concept of phasing makes an awful lot of sense. And I think that, we need to respond to the realities as they develop. But I also think that a real important part of the whole concept of phasing is that we really don't know yet how bad it's going to be in terms of sea level rise. But I also think that it's reasonable that we all have a common purpose to minimize the amount of sea level rise. And I feel that, in many respects, the West Marin community is a very environmentally conscious community. I think that there's been kind of a disconnect between, where in the past, we've kind of almost had an adversarial sense between Coastal Commission and the community around our future and our ability to maintain our community. But if we include as part of this vision, as part of this, what are we trying to accomplish? Some sense of how can we maintain resiliency when we talk about, for example, mitigation. We're not just talking about mitigation of sand, we're also talking about mitigation of carbon emissions and figuring out ways that our communities can be more reliant on renewable energy. I just want to mention that as an example, we're exploring microgrids. We're at the end of the transmission lines. We have a lot of power outages in our community. But when we start to look into just the possibility of getting renewable energy in our community, there's so much permitting uncertainty about that, about being able to have solar on our hillsides, or even to have a shared sense of what's the potential direction forward. So, I know that's a large subject, but there's also a lot of agencies already in the state of California that can work with the Coastal Commission on this, I believe. And I really feel that we have an opportunity to start to set a path forward where we, who are on the front lines of climate change, front lines of sea level rise, can help set an example of how we can mitigate and reduce climate change and the threats that are threatening our coastal communities.
Thanks, Tom. Would anyone else like to speak?
Or does anyone have more to say?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, that if you have already spoken and want to contribute some more information or share anything else, please feel free to do so as well. Katie, please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Katie Beacock, and I'm a lifelong Marin County resident. And my grandparents used to come to Stinson Beach for daily trips on the old crookedest railway way back when. So I am extremely wedded to all of Marin, and particularly West Marin. I have sat through many, 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 many hours of hearings and meetings over the last 40 years with the Coastal Commission and the county. And I want to say this is the first time I feel like there's a meeting where people are listening instead of yelling at one another. And I applaud the county for your leadership in promoting this cooperation for all of us to resolve something. The Coastal Act was envisioned, and by the way, I voted for it when it happened, was envisioned to protect the coast for the people of California. Somebody mentioned earlier that our north coast, north of the Golden Gate Bridge, is very different than the coast of Central and Southern California, and we pride our little communities. I really want to see us all work together. We know sea level rise is happening, but there have been so many scare tactics that have withdrawn the ability to logically work through issues that I hope we can see this reverse course and work together. Managed retreat is not a viable option as far as my position, not just as having been in business in Stinson Beach for 40 years, but also how can the county, who's going to pay those homeowners for those millions of dollars lost? How's the county going to make up for the loss in tax base? And then you go to our little Stinson Beach. How are we going to address sea level rise with Highway 1 and the septic systems and our fire department and just escape? So I hope that we can see this as the beginning of another level, if you will, of collaboration to really come up with solutions instead of just argue about facts. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Ken, tell us some more.
Thanks. Watching this meeting unfold, of course, I am appreciative of the county's role in putting it together and listening to us. But the county has been doing that and representing us, I think, fairly well for the last 4 or 5 or more years on this subject. I am more concerned with what the response will be from the staff of the California Coastal Commission. And I would love to hear a statement from them at some time during this meeting about how they intend to respond to the various statements that have been made by residents and homeowners in West Marin who are going to be intimately affected by the decisions that they as staff and their commission make. I'm totally happy with the county's representation of us. They know us, they've heard from us, they understand our concerns and they share them. I have no idea what the staff of the Coast Commission is thinking about any of this. And frankly, I'm a little disturbed that I feel separated from them. I mean, I'm a taxpayer and the Coast Commission works for us. Thank you.
Well, I feel like, we sort of have to respond to that because it's the reason we're here tonight. It's the reason we are undertaking this effort with the county. It's the reason we want to hear from you guys. And, just so everyone on this Zoom knows, you are welcome to contact the Coastal Commission about concerns with the LCP update at any point. We have a posted North Central Coast email address that you can write feedback to regarding the policies when and if they become public. You know, the county will be sharing all of that feedback with us as well. And, you know, we can have that email address posted on the county's website for this effort. And maybe we'll also put it in the chat here so that you guys can start to, you know, put your feedback in writing. I mean, you know, I think everything I'm hearing about priorities for the community is things that we've heard before. And Julia, Honora, and I are all relatively new to this effort. So it's really good to hear it from you in person. And we'll look forward to, you know, seeing things in writing as well. And I think once the policies become public, that's when we're really looking for you guys to weigh in. But we are charged with the Coastal Act as our law. Kathleen went through that. And so just understand that that's also a consideration. And you know, we're really glad to be hearing from everybody about their priorities because it helps us understand, you know, the balance that we need to strike.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just to add, I really appreciate Stephanie's response. I think it's just like, we can't underestimate the value of all of us, you know, both agency staff kind of hearing the same thing from people at the same time. But also I've heard things tonight, you know, I've heard a lot of things that I've already heard even in the brief time that I've been with the county, but I've also heard, you know, some new stuff that's really getting some wheels turning, talking about infrastructure, talking about community-wide solutions, talking about, you know, kind of supporting innovative approaches to achieving, you know, bigger goals around climate mitigation, and how that can play into things. So like next time we meet, we're working regularly with Coastal Commission staff. Next time we meet, I think we're going to have a whole lot of new stuff to talk about as a result of tonight. So I don't think we're ready yet to give a full, you know, this is exactly how we're going to use this, because now we have a whole bunch of new material to be using.
So I just want to highlight that Honora did put the contact information for the Coastal Commission into the chat. So feel free to reach out with them. And I think it's a great idea. We will add it to our website as well, so that everybody knows that they have an ability to contact both of us and talk to both of us. And we are working collaboratively together. Mary, you've got your hand up. Please, thanks.
Hi. Hello, everyone. And I too would like to thank everyone for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Mary Hawley. I'm the district manager for the Muir Beach Community Services District, and I represent Muir Beach on the Alliance of Coastal Marin Villages, as well as the Coastal Communities Working Group. I am also the president of the East Shore Planning Group, where I grew up and have lived in Marshall since 1969. So I care very, very deeply about the preservation of our coastal villages and the unique environment that surrounds them. And as many of our community members, we have been involved in this long process in amending the Marin LCP, and now more specifically, the environmental hazard section, as both representatives of our villages and on the Coastal Communities Working Group. And we have watched and reviewed and participated with our CD staff and watched them as they drafted each new revision, held public workshops, and took into consideration much diverse public comment. Our observations have been that our county staff is quite versed in the Coastal Act and goes to great lengths to measure every word in the LCP to comply with that standard, along with the stakeholder groups, and many of them making concessions and processes to meet this goal as well. So we don't believe that there really has been anything in these recent EH drafts that did not comply with the Coastal Act. did not conform with California code and regulations, and even followed the shared principles that came out of the joint cities working groups under any reasonable interpretation of that. So we kind of find ourselves a bit puzzling to be back at square one, because we really feel like our county staff has been working really diligently to do this properly. And we all have been working and laboring over the same concepts for over 13 years now. And we believe that all of the terminology and issues are very well known at this point. But we remain dedicated to the public process going forward and committed to a balanced and measured outcome. And I just wanted to give some support to our county planning, because they have been working really hard. And I feel like it's interesting to all be back at square one again. Thank you.
I don't have any additional hands raised at this time. I can say that Ken put in the chat that he wanted to thank Stephanie for her direct response. Some of that was appreciated. Would anybody else care to speak or add additional information on top of something they've already shared?
I know we said we weren't responding, but I did want to respond to Mary, because I can hear that frustration of feeling like we're back at square one. And we're really not. There is a lot of ground, even in the environmental hazards portion, that what the county had brought forward, and where the Coastal Commission is. There's a lot of common ground. We do have these key long-standing issues that we're still not reconciled on, and we felt like we're not going to get there by continuing the same approach, and so we really need to dig into those specific particular things. But all of that work has been done, and is absolutely not for naught, and carrying forward. So I did want to say that.
Lori, would you like to speak?
I would, thank you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Lori Kyle, formerly a director of the East Shore Planning Group in Marshall. The community, the county, and the Coastal Commission have been working on the LCP for about, 13 years or more now. I'm delighted to have this face-to-face meeting. Previously, it was not possible. And so many of the concerns, the information that we shared, and recommendations that we made were without acknowledgement or consideration. So I have a couple of questions moving forward with this new format. And once again, thank you so much. I wanted to find out if we share information specific, for instance, in our case, to the East Shore, will the commission staff be able to respond, or do ex parte rules still apply? Previously, there was never a direct response. I don't know if that was an administrative choice or whether it was a policy per se.
Are you speaking about communications directly with commissioners?
No, well, yes, we always send our communications to both the commission and to staff. And so I wanted to find out if staff will be able to respond directly to recommendations we might make, or new information that we feel might be helpful to your considerations.
So at this juncture, we've explained, there's not exactly policy to speak directly to. When you do send comments to that inbox, we keep them as correspondence to the file. If there's a substantive question within, we will usually answer it. If you're just making statements about your opinions on the policies, that's going to be taken into account, and we'll do what we can, but it sort of depends on the volume of direct questions, so. And if you want to talk to commissioners, that there's a different set of rules. That's when the ex parte communication comes in.
Okay, great. Thank you. The other I had a couple of both observations and questions. The Coastal Act, the LCP is a huge document. And although Coastal Act and the LCP mention communities, the unique character of our communities, I wanted to find out, if possible, if you're able to consider this and get back to us in some ways, how is it weighted with the actual the wildlife, the agriculture, this type of thing? Where do we fit in the overall picture in Coastal Commission and coastal staff's opinion of a balanced and resilient coastal network of both natural and human involvement?
So that's going to sort of be a policy consideration we have to think through. It's you know, it's what Kathleen spoke to at the top of the meeting, balance considerations. And, you know, I don't think that the county or commission staff has come up with that balance yet. They're all considerations that we have to weigh. And, you know, I can't really speak to specifics right now because we, again, don't have policy directing us there.
You shouldn't even be answering those questions. It's a listening session.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to present those questions and your review of them.
Hazardous being in.
Leslie, I think you might need to mute.
We have a comment in the chat that states, please keep being careful not to see the coast as a static diorama behind glass in a museum. It is a living, evolving space, and that life includes and embraces humans. Sea level rise will be part of the change, and we need to find a way to manage change and evolution in a holistic, living fashion. Seeing no other hands, that does seem like a nice comment to start to wrap things up on. Of course, if anything else comes up, please put that in the chat. I'm just going to come back and share my screen one more time to provide you with our website information and our contact information. So let's see. So if you have any additional comments, you can visit us at www.marinlcp.org or send us an email at marinlcp@marincounty.org. I'll also put that message in the chat. And Jack, if you would like to say anything. Oh,
we have another one.
Someone. Oh yeah, it's a parting question, and I guess yeah, it ties into what you're probably going to speak to. But if you could just let us know when to expect the next opportunity for community input to the process, we can kind of just summarize what the next steps are and where we're headed with the process.
Yeah, we don't have. That's one of the things that we need to work out is a schedule that will allow us to grapple with these issues that have been so well characterized by so many of you this afternoon. As we do that, we will let people know. And when we have answers to that question, we will certainly make that available to everybody. In the meantime, I would like to thank everyone for the participation this afternoon. It has been extraordinarily helpful, and we just really appreciate your time and the input that you've given, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing you soon again. So thank you and good evening.